Most women like to shop. Kinsey, do you like shopping?
I don't know. It depends on the kind of shopping, I guess.
Yeah.
I think
You're
if
a
I'm
very efficient person.
Yeah. If I'm like on a mission for something,
Yes.
then
It's not
that's
shopping.
fine.
You're just in and
Well,
out,
yeah, maybe I don't like shopping then. I think it depends. I like shopping for my kids.
Okay.
Because I'm like, they look good in everything. So I'm just I love buying them clothes because I think they're so cute. Anything in mini is just cute.
Yes.
So I think it just kind of depends. But online shopping, I actually kind of quite like.
Yes.
Because I'm like, oh, okay, I see a thing. That's what I want. I get to see, a review of it, and I can purchase it quickly. So maybe my hyper efficiency mode needs to just chill out a little bit so I can enjoy some of the finer things in life. But
I struggle going to brick and mortar shops, like going to say a big box store to find a tool, because I'm thinking, I don't know if this is rubbish or if it's the greatest tool ever. Yeah. I had a situation where I bought some Milwaukee tools actually, and I got back and I was like, oh, that's actually not quite what I was looking for. Just some tin snips actually. I was like, that's not, and it wasn't until I was cutting sheet metal that I realized,
nope,
that's not what I was looking for.
Dang it.
Anyway, I do like shopping, but not like walking through the mall.
Yeah.
I mean, I like checking out the reviews, and it is mission based. I'm like, okay, I need a hot water heater. I want to shop it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not just buying bags. Or I might buy shoes. Tennis shoes. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think online shopping's changed the game with that. Though,
so has.
Right? Like we were talking about that even earlier of just like being able to, I don't even know that I always actively look for the reviews, but I certainly look for the stars and the number. Probably I give it always a quick glance before I purchase a product online.
And if a product is 2 stars, are you even looking at it?
No, probably not.
Yeah,
I'm like, never mind.
Yes, yeah.
Pretty quickly moving along.
And probably Amazon's algorithm is not even showing us those products, right?
True.
They're like, nobody's buying that.
Right.
Yeah, definitely all the comparables. I mean, upgraded the HVAC system recently, and I was looking at this model versus that model, and manufacturers and performance, and how long is this thing going to last?
Did you get that project done?
Yes, it is done. Yes. Finally.
Yeah.
One of the things that really just jumped out at me, though, is when you look at different products, it's really hard to find something with a lifetime warranty, bulletproof type product, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, just very few products. And when they do have that type of lifetime warranty, then they have some caveats of, as long as with the original owner and it was maintained properly and you have a maintenance log for the last 100 years, we will change it for free if we're still around. Yep. And it made me think about why that is. I think one of the things that manufacturers are up against is the cost of making something perfect.
Right.
It just costs so much money to do that. Making something with the right materials and products that last for a very long time is just expensive to do.
Sure.
And so they're trying to balance that whole aspect of, we need to make money, we need to make it last long enough where we have a good reputation, but also not so, such a extreme quality product that is anybody going to pay for it?
Right.
And there are brands that kind of put in that level of quality or supposedly do, where you're spending 10 times more than another brand and it's supposed to last a really, really long time. But I think we're up against that in construction in a big way too. There's this tension between quality or perfection and profit.
Right.
And so how do we kind of reconcile all of that? And it's just this, like, getting to 90% perfect, let's say, is kind of rather reasonable of an expectation. But then there's this curve of the closer you get towards, well, nothing's perfect, but the closer you get towards perfection, the higher the cost.
Yeah. I think as we were prepping for the show too, it made me think, like, I feel like this topic is like the topic in construction. Like, everybody struggles with this, I think, to a certain degree, one way or another. Because, we've talked about this on, I think, even just like project management podcast that we did a while back, managing projects like a boss. I think that was the episode of, like, doing it one time is doable.
Like finishing a project.
Yeah, like getting it done to perfection or quality, right? Like, let's just say. But then having the expectations set to where you can do that consistently, I think is a whole nother game.
Yes. It's like a restaurant. Cooking one steak's not hard, but cooking hundreds of them every day is quite difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeping everybody happy.
For sure.
One of the things that's also, we want to just dive right into this concept of perfection because I think a lot of us pride ourselves in being somewhat perfectionistic about things. Like we like things to be done well.
Yes.
If you listen to this podcast, you probably like things done well.
You care about doing things better. You care about excellence and,
you care about improving.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Right. And I think there's this, how do you make money in it? I remember one time working with my dad on a project, and he was just telling me, like, we're done, and I'm thinking, we are not done. Like, that quality is not good enough.
Yeah.
And it was, a project where I'm thinking, and I had this little bit of like this sadness walking away from the job and being like, we could have made it so much better if we just put a little more time into it. But I think the thing that I was blind to is the whole process of how we got to the finishes of that project.
Right.
And we were done because that was what the client was paying for. And I think that's the thing sometimes we miss is, particularly if you're a sort of a quality driven person and you really like things precise and done right, there's time involved with doing that. And sometimes somebody doesn't want to pay for that extra time.
Right.
And so we're gonna really unpack this a lot because there's a lot to go over here. I think this is gonna be a really fun episode, and hopefully kind of demystify some of this, and also maybe resolve the tension between profit and perfection.
Yeah, I love it. I think one of the main themes that we were just talking about is, hey, perfection actually doesn't exist, right? Like, there's no such thing as perfection, like complete perfection. Yep. You break that down. Like, why were you even like coming to that conclusion?
Well, funny enough, there are some things that we can't even judge perfection against. I mean, if you look at when I was shopping for my wife a diamond for her ring, I learned a lot about diamonds, naturally. And all diamonds have some flaw, whether visible to the naked eye or on the atomic level, there's some flaw, right? There's a grade, and they have a scale for grading diamonds, and they have a visibly flawed kind of, like, you can see there's this carbon in the diamond and it's not valuable. But, I found one that it was in my budget and price, and some people are going to say that's a lot of money and other people will say it's too cheap. Yeah. But nonetheless, that was what I wanted to pay for. And I think it really kind of illustrates the fact that true perfection in nature, like, we're all flawed to some degree or another. There's just this kind of like, some people and some things are closer to perfection than others, right? Yeah. And so I think there's this, we all kind of look for this elusive perfection, but it doesn't exist. Right. And particularly when you work for other people, it's just, there's so much going on there. Somebody's idea of what perfect is and yours might be totally different.
Your scales are completely different, right? Yes. Like, what I think's perfect and you think's perfect is completely different, likely. Yeah.
True.
Unless we're raised in the same house, the same way. I mean, like, all those things. I think.
And how would we arrive at the same determination? We would have a conversation about it, and we would say, "Hey, what I think that's perfect," and you would say, "Yeah, I think so too." Yeah. And the funny thing about it, somebody looks at one car and says, "That is, Cybertruck. I think it's ugly."
I do too.
But somebody else is like,
but now I'm kind of thinking they're kind of cool, like getting cool. I'm a laggard, so it takes me a while to like things. You know?
I mean, it is an interesting concept for a truck, but I'm like, it takes a little time to getting used to. And I'm thinking like all those hard edges on it. But somebody else listening to says, "Don't be knocking my truck."
I have a Cybertruck.
Yeah, that is an awesome truck.
You're right. It is cool.
Yeah,
to a certain degree.
So it's in the beauty in the eyes of the beholder.
Yeah.
So there is an aspect of that where somebody might like some hypercar and says that's amazing. I'm thinking that's totally impractical. I have no use for it whatsoever. That's not anything I want. So there's a subjective nature to perfection.
Different,
and I think we have to keep that in mind as contractors, that people building things, that it doesn't matter what we think necessarily. It's like, what do people actually value? What do they want to pay for? And so let's kind of take away this concept of perfection, replace the word with quality, and let's get a scale going. Let's figure out how do we define quality as opposed to just arbitrarily, we have a tingle of what we think is perfection.
What we feel is.
Yeah. Which could be completely arbitrary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the best contractors are the people that can sort of make that balance and sort of, find that spot where customers are happy. They're saying, this is a great job, I'm happy with it. And really be able to, they're the talkative ones. They can engage with people and discuss through the whole process of how do we got to the destination.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've noticed too that with a bubble level that, you put it against a wall and somebody says that wall is level. Well, there's different varying degrees of level, it's not perfect. And there's a reason for that, because 2x4s aren't perfectly straight. Drywall never gets finished to perfectly straight in a corner.
It'd be nice if they did.
Yeah. Metal studs, you can get closer. There are options for you kids.
Okay. But you're going to pay for it.
Right. Quality. Well, even, yes, exactly. But the closer you get to straight, the closer you get. But then there's outside the lines. Yeah. Where everyone's going to say, that is just not even close. That's outside the lines. And how close to center you get, and that's something that we should strive for. But at the same time, there's a variance that's allowed. Yeah. And but we need to define what that variance is with something that's level, straight, plumb, true, all those kinds of things. Well, how plumb, how true, how straight, how, that's where we get lost. That's where we start losing money if it's not understood ahead of time.
That's good. That's good.
I think there's also this concept that like perfection and professionalism are the same thing. They're not, because it's so subjective. Like we aim to be perfect, and I think there's also like let's obviously change the dictionary let's change our dictionary to use quality and also define the quality. But because of perfect is so subjective that somebody can really manipulate that too as well. Like, well, you said it was going to be perfect. Yeah. It was not perfect.
Yeah. Well, and professionalism, it could be a crappy job and it still be professionally managed to a certain degree. If you're communicating well with your customer, if you're delivering what was sold.
So somebody wanted that destination, what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. If the end goal was, hey, I want it fast and cheap, then that can still be professional. You as a contractor can still be a professional and handle with professionalism, and it's not necessarily perfect build, if you will.
One of the tendencies for the sales, a lot of our audience, you guys are pretty good at selling things. Hence why you're running your own business. You know how to communicate things, and you also are in a spot where you can explain, we're going to do a great job. We're going to, you're building yourself up and your team and what you can deliver. Yep. And I think there's a real danger in all of this to oversell quality and then get yourself in a world of hurt later where someone's saying, I thought this is going to be perfect.
Right.
And so don't oversell something you can't deliver.
That's good.
I found that out the hard way, because I always expected, well, we should be able to do a great job. We should be able to deliver some exceptional work. And then you start realizing how difficult and how time consuming that is to actually get done.
Right.
And then you're like, man, oh man, why did I oversell this thing? So don't promise it. And then I think there's this understanding that costs go up exponentially to your customer the closer you are towards that gold standard
of quality.
Yeah. So there's this curve, to kind of deliver baseline results. It's just sort of a flat line, and it just exponentially increases that curve the closer we get to quality, to perfection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long does that like the entire process, the entire build process, that curve is happening with quality, or is it at the end, or is it consistently throughout the project?
Well, let's say to the first 90% of the, the quality standard, where 90% is kind of the expectation. That's an A, you passed, that's a good job. But the
good work.
The more you go beyond that, the curve just is shooting up like, skyrocketing.
Like the last 10%.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So, and I think there's also an aspect you mentioned earlier of the client might want something subpar. Well, you're failing your client if you're delivering a $2 million job on a $1 million budget, because they don't have the money to pay for it.
And failing yourself because they're not going to be able to pay you.
Right.
So you're cutting into your profit.
Yeah. So this is not a good deal for anybody.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The diminishing, what they call the curve of diminishing returns is like, for the amount of effort you put into something, you'll see this in speed with vehicles as well. The amount of fuel you burn to get past, if you're going 50 miles an hour, kind of a sweet spot, 60 miles an hour, you're kind of just sort of flatline increase but as 100 miles an hour, you're burning fuel way less efficiently to get to that kind of speed. You go to 200-300 miles an hour, you're just sucking fuel like crazy in comparison to the result. So the law of diminishing returns, the closer you get to something of higher quality, of higher speed, the more you burn. Rockets going to be just sucking fuel down like crazy. Right. So I think we have that in construction as well. You're trying to get to the standard, and you're realizing every little detail. Let's get to practicals though, of like, you're painting a wall. Well, just slapping a coat of paint on something is not hard.
Right.
But if that wall is going to be smooth, corners are going to be straight. Yep. The finishes are going to be, any kind of stains, any kind of imperfections in the wall are addressed ahead of time.
Yep.
That prep is expensive.
Right. There's cost to that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the closer we are to perfectly smooth, the more coats, the more lights, the more time,
sanding, the more,
sanding and multiple levels up. Yep. And the cost of somebody coming along and dinging your wall while you're not done yet. It's like shoveling the walk while it's snowing still. That could be, like somebody comes along and says, you're not done. I was.
Until you dinged my wall.
Yes.
Oh, man. I think a lot of what we're talking about, though, I feel like the tension that we're really speaking to is like really in the selling process, right? Like, what we're talking about is, hey, are you and your customer on the same page? Do you know what the customer wants? And are you able to deliver what the customer wants? And do they know what you can deliver? Are you educating them through the process? And so I feel like if you're trying to sell quality and your customer doesn't want quality, it's probably the wrong customer. But I think it points out a selling issue if you're finding yourself in this like hamster wheel of like, man, I'm hardly achieving any profit, because probably the selling point and the scope was the biggest problem in the process.
So we're trying to reconcile one of the aspects of estimating, quoting, you bidding, whatever you want to call it. You're defining what's being done, and what often gets missed is to what quality standard. And so if the task is hardwood flooring, install the flooring is the basics of the task.
Right.
But then there's some additional specifics, like to what pattern, what product. But then we got to talk about, well, the tightness of the seams and the quality of the workmanship. Well, somebody doesn't have a lot of experience doing that, they can probably do that a lot cheaper than somebody's been doing it for 30 years. But that guy that's been doing it for his entire career he's going to know the tricks, he's going to know the hacks, but he's probably more efficient at it too. But nonetheless, the quality output from that, he should be making more money because he's earned it over time. Like he's that skill that came through trial and error, and experience is valuable. And so I think there's an aspect of sometimes that is just completely lost on people, that it's expensive to get to that destination. I think what this speaks to is, though, defining the scope and including the quality up front. So we need to just demystify the task where it's not just put the hardwood flooring in, but we're defining into what quality. We're laying tile to what tightness, to what tolerance, how flat is the floor. And also the prep aspect of it. Are we changing out the subflooring? What type of substrate are we putting down? What type of materials are we using? What patterns are we, all of this stuff needs definition. We could be putting on a new roof on somebody's house. The simple aspect of just throwing another roof on top of the existing roof is the basics.
Right.
Or we're doing a tear off, or we're actually changing out any sheathing that's damaged. We could be changing out flashing. Some things, if the net result was, I want a roof that doesn't leak, and that was the only requirement, well, maybe we could just throw a roof up there, solve the leak, and be done with it. Where somebody said, no, I want this thing done right, meaning let's address anything that's of concern ahead of time. Well, that's going to cost more money.
Absolutely.
So I think that sometimes gets missed because we just do task-based pricing. Put the floor in, do the roof, set the trim.
I think one of the things you said earlier too, that's like a huge risk point to like that task-based, like broad task-based estimating, quoting, scoping, was just the nature of some customers trying to extract more from you at the end of the project, right? Like if there's not any specifics or details of like, hey, what is the specific scope to what quality, what exclusions, those kinds of things, then your customer is going to look at it, because customers have no idea. You have install flooring on there. They have a vision in their mind of what that's going to look like. If it looks different at completion, at your completion, then it does in my mind, I'm going to be like, well, that's not what I was wanting. Or not,
they see big dollars being spent. They think, well, I spent $20,000 on that. That's a lot of money. They don't know you spent $18,000 on your costs, and you're just barely making it.
Right.
So they're thinking at the tail end, but I need to get my money's worth. I need to make sure I'm looking out for myself. And so I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me on poorly scoped projects where I get to the tail end of a job, I'm thinking I'm done, and they're saying, no, you're not.
Yeah.
We're going to be milking this for a while yet.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're hanging their curtains for free.
Not in the scope.
Yeah, exactly. Don't tell me there's a little pain there, know.
But I think, though, it does highlight, like, if we get encouraged, one thing in this podcast, obviously, hopefully a lot of things, but one thing specifically, it's like the time spent in scoping effectively and in detail is going to save you money in the end, because your customer's not going to be able to push you over, at the end. And you're also going to have a level of quality that you are expected, or your team is expected to fulfill, that you can then meet.
This can feel overwhelming as well when you are trying to put that level of detail into scope. So you need to make sure that you're saving your work on these things, where you can really think through the task in its complete start to finish, and not just the task of doing it, but everything preparatory and setup related.
Yep.
Sometimes that involves pulling permits. Sometimes that involves site setup, cleanup, waste removal. All of the auxiliary tasks are defined too. Who's cleaning up the nails in your yard after the roof's done? Well, somebody had to do it.
Right. It's labor.
It took time.
Yeah.
So
instead of install roof, right, or roof without leaks, how would you say? I mean, like, I know we're not going into detail on an estimating course right now, but how would you suggest someone actually break that out into more specific task related, to the bigger task.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with our setup. We're gonna put a dumpster on property. That's how the waste is getting removed. We're putting a 30-yard dumpster for the waste removal on your driveway. This is how it's being done.
Yep.
Or we're using roll-offs, or we're using some other system. We're using netting to protect the house and bushes. All that stuff gets defined, or not.
Yes.
We're just going to put a sheet of plywood up against the front window, and it's going to shoot down right into our trailer or our dumpster. Or we're just going to throw it off. So we're defining the process, and then we're going to do a tear off or not a tear off. We're going to and then if the things like sheeting need to be replaced, that could be something like it's not included. We're not replacing any sheeting.
Yep.
But if we discover something, we'll let you know.
Yep.
Flashing is not being replaced. Here's how we're sealing the valleys. Here's how we're putting ice and water shield around the edge. Here's what we're doing for our flashing. Here's what we're doing for our product.
Yeah.
Here's the installation method. Here's what we're using for a ridge vent. Here's how we're doing here's the whole warranty process as well. This shingle comes with manufacturers this warranty. This is what we warranty. This is how we clean up. This is how we basically leave your site.
Yeah.
What's the condition we leave your site in? So I think it takes a little bit more time, but then you can recycle that too. Like use it on the next job.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, as a homeowner, instead of seeing replace roof,
yes,
and $35,000 at the bottom, like actually seeing that level of detail, I'm like, oh wow, they actually know what they're doing, and you're able to educate me on the process. And then that $30,000 doesn't seem quite so. I mean, obviously, it's still painful for a roof because it's not a bathroom,
Yeah,
I'd rather have a bathroom than a roof, But I think that from a homeowner standpoint, like, let's just say they're getting 4 bids, and 3 of them are install new roof without leaking, and you have the level of detail that you're talking about. I think you're going to be set apart. They're going to feel taken care of even before you start the project.
I can't tell you how many jobs I've won off of detail and how many I've lost off the lack of detail even. I've had a couple of times where one of the first big projects I ever bid, I actually did not win the bid because my bid was too cheap. Surprise, surprise, and somebody said, I want quality and I want all these expectations. And that guy, he probably hasn't sorted it out. And I'd rather sort that out now than later.
Right.
Smart on them.
Yep.
So somebody that doesn't have the experience to bid it out yet and is missing stuff, and they saw through that. And so that there's a lot going on here, which I think can be deal with the pain up front.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to take backspace on your keyboard and say, or think about that ahead of time. One complete process, what's going to be done here? How are we doing that? What kind of products are we using? Nails, all the things,
Yeah.
You're putting a fence and they're expecting screws and you bid out nails. Well, you got, 3x the manpower and putting up a fence to a different standard that they expected.
Right.
So instead of saying install fence, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
Here's the product we're using. Here's the installation method.
So good.
So I think this saves us a lot on the other end.
Yeah.
Customers start trusting us more.
Yep.
I think there's an aspect of like the end result being understood as well, right? It's like, obviously we talk about process, but end result has to be clearly defined.
Yeah. And you and your customers actually aligned on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we arrive at a spot where later on there's a discrepancy between their expectation and yours, then something went wrong in the selling process.
Yeah, absolutely. Quality should be discussed up front.
You brought up the whole customers milking it later. This prevents that from happening too, because now we can point back to the source of truth and say, this is what you agreed on ahead of time. Yep. I've had multiple times doing a project where you had multiple rooms being renovated. One was the completely new.
Yeah.
Add on, do the kitchen.
Yeah.
Then there were the auxiliary rooms, the bathroom. And all we wanted to do there, people are great at accepting ambiguity on the front end as customers. Yep. Well, we trust you. Do it however you normally do it. Just throw a coat of paint on it. It'll be fine. Yeah. And then later being like, this isn't done.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't look like the other side.
Yeah.
I thought, what happened to the guy that just wanted to, no problem, just a coat of paint? Now you want something else.
Yeah.
So defining even that of just being like, hey, in that room, there's no prep.
Yeah.
We're just putting a coat of paint on, just improving it some. We're not bringing it up to the level of other things.
Well, and it gives you a source of truth. Like if you're going fixed bid, a lot of people are. If you're going fixed bid, you have that source of truth that you can then change order on. If they're like, well, I don't like it, no problem. We'd be happy to fix that to match the quality of the rest of the project. It's going to be X amount,
Yes.
And then they're agreeing to that or not.
That gives you an opportunity to make the money off of the extra work.
Profit,
yes.
Right,
I mean,
there.
and that is how you reconcile this tension.
Yes.
You're the educator, you're the expert, and you really kind of eliminate, lose that role as soon as you accept ambiguity on your side. Now you're telling your customer, actually, I'm going to let you define something that I should have defined. Now suddenly they're coming back, and they also feel vulnerable because they're thinking, I mean, give you an example of this. I had just had some hydro seeding work done at my property. Okay. So I had some grass that we had, done some site work, and I needed seeded. I've never had that done before. So I had two people come out, and they're very similarly in price, and they even knew each other. They don't, it's like, yeah, he does okay, and they tell you kind of, they kind of have this kind of
competitors.
They're competitors, right? And so they were, respectful to each other, but nonetheless, I don't have the experience, and both bids were such as do the work, hydro seed this amount of land, so much per square foot, and it's very kind of disconcerting as a consumer because I feel like I have to look out for myself. I don't know how fast it should grow, how long it should take. I'm asking all these questions, and what happens if it doesn't grow?
Yeah.
Am I just paying for it anyway?
Right.
As opposed to having that all defined ahead of time. If 90% of the grass should grow perfectly, we might have to come back out and do more of it because of these standards. Like that would have been nice to know ahead of time. And now I'm in a position of saying, now is the rest of the grass going to grow? And he'd say, oh, it'll be fine. We don't want to hear that kind of thing at the tail end of it. And that, this project is new enough where I don't know how it's going to.
The grass is growing.
Yes, some of it is. But nonetheless, that aspect of it, though, you're putting your client in a position where they're telling you how things are, and they're having to do their own research and come back to you. They feel vulnerable, and how do they resolve that? I want to go talk to somebody else and get their expertise weighed in on it instead of I'm trusting my contractor to be the expert because he was the one that took me by the hand right from the beginning and said, here's how it's done.
Yeah. All my other projects, 95% have grown. Well, I've had to come back for 5%, blah, blah. I mean, educating
exactly.
On that.
Right.
Excellent.
And then you feel confident to be like, he's going to take
you've done
care
this
of
before.
me. Yes. And at the end result, all I have to go by is this guy has a good reputation. He has 4.9 stars on Google, hopefully does good work.
Yep.
That's all I have to go off on at this point. But you want to give more than that.
Yeah.
And also, what if I was in a position as a customer where I'm expecting perfection? I mean, I want a golf course. Well, he's putting himself in a position where he might not be able to deliver my expectations because what he sold me and what I thought in my head are two different things.
And really, the customer determines the value that they can actually afford, right?
Yes.
So back to that sliding scale of quality. We talked about perfection earlier, but the sliding scale of quality of what I need if I'm flipping a house. I need a contractor to just come do it as fast and as cheap as possible. Again, I'm not paying for the level of quality, that you're going to get if it's a multi-generational home or your forever home, those kinds of things. You're going to care a lot more about the finishes, about what's selected, about how it's done, about the process than you are on a flip. You're like, aesthetically, this needs to look good so I can sell it as fast as I can. I mean, right? They different goals, different motivations.
We can't stress how key this is, guys, that you need to understand the result up front. Instead of making the assumptions or even projecting on the customer of saying we do it to this quality standard, somebody might not even care, and somebody might care more than you do. And so having that conversation up front, I would love that question up front. So what's the net result here? What do you want this to look like when I'm all done?
How do you get to that though? I mean, as a contractor, how do you actually uncover that? Because so many people are, let's just say it's a remodel job. I've got a bathroom on my mind because I want to do my own bathroom.
You got to get that thing done.
I know.
It's going to be endless podcasts about this bathroom.
That's fine. It's relevant content, still a thing, But I'm looking at Pinterest. I'm seeing all these things. So how do you, obviously I have some examples that I'm seeing that I'm like, I really like that. Now I have no idea if the contractor can deliver what I'm seeing in this picture or not. And pictures look better than they do in person a lot of times too. But I guess how, as a contractor, how did you, I don't know, what kinds of questions did you ask to actually get to the bottom of hey, what is it that they want? Because people sometimes don't know how to verbalize what they want.
In the Pinterest example, you have the aesthetic property of the photo you're looking at of I like the way this cabinet looks combined with this flooring and this particular style of hardware or whatever else is appealing as a part of that photo, right? So there's an aspect of the aesthetics, but then there's also the delivery, which you're saying that the picture could mask. Somebody could have done a subpar or just passing grade install on that cabinet. Right. Just it's okay, but not great. And that picture might not show that. So I think that's the thing of when you talked about the customer determining budgetary, somewhat motivated. Sometimes that's what it comes down to. If you want to eat filet mignon, you got to pay for it. It's an aspect of and so that's the educating role that we take as a contractor coming into it to be like, this is the baseline quality that we can deliver. Here's the upcharges, and I think somebody needs to understand that as well. Of so many times when we do task-based quoting, what we're putting ourselves in, as far as competition is concerned, is in the same category of everyone else is doing the same task. And so if it's a bathroom remodel and my bid says remodel bathroom and somebody else says remodel bathroom, all you have to go off of is the two guys are the exact same thing and one guy's $15,000 more than the other one.
Yeah.
So clearly he's just making way more profit. Whereas in reality,
Could be
the guy that's charging you $15,000 more might make less money than the other guy as far as profit's concerned, but it's masked based on the fact that the quality, the deliverables were not really explained and delineated in that bid. So I think to get to that destination, we're kind of probing around obviously the net result. What do you want? But also like it's got to fit into the home. Like you might have a $200,000 home in a in a neighborhood that's what the homes cost, or you might have $1 million home. And it's kind of got to fit into that home. So that's part of the conversation as well. For this quality of home, this might be the kind of deliverable. Yeah. And so, I think there are some helpful tools here as well, like some of the trade organizations, like the American, I'm losing it now, but there's the Tile Institute of America, something like that. You guys can look it up. But anyway, basically they'll have specifications about this is standard workmanship, should have these specifications for lippage of tile. This is basically how flat the floor should be between tiles. You can look at some of these standards out there, or paint qualities, or drywall qualities. Is it a level 3 finish, level 4, level 5? And so there's some of that out there as helpful guides in different trades. Brick laying, is it tuck pointed, and what's the process like, and how much, and some of it comes down to your reputation as well. Sometimes that's all you have to go on. We only do premium high end work, and it's going to be way more than the other guy.
Yeah, we only do level 5 drywall or whatever. Yeah,
right. You're in high demand. You do premium work. That's the only thing you do, and it becomes a lot easier to specialize in that. And I think that's why this is a tricky piece, particularly for guys when you're starting out. You don't know where you want to land on that scale. Yeah. You don't know if you're just in there. I'm a trim carpenter. I get in, get out. I do good quality work, but I'm not working for billionaires. Right. And I'm not working on track housing. And so it's trying to figure out where you land in the scale, what you can deliver consistently, what your team can deliver consistently. How do you level up? I mean, there's so many variables going on here. But I think to sum it all up, though, we've got to define everything up front. And if we don't understand it ourselves, how is our customer supposed to understand it? We have to reconcile. We need to make money. We have to make a profit. Unless we're actually just completely destroying things and redoing things because we just have no idea what we're doing, we should be making profit. Right. And then really just making sure we have those definitions defined up front, work for the right people. Yeah, absolutely. And then and then just all of these auxiliary things, site setup and prep and cleanup, and all of these things are defined. Yeah, so good, so good. I think working for the right people, having the scope defined, protects you and it protects your customer. So it's very fair. Whether your price is more expensive, whether your price is cheaper, it's fair to have the level of detail of the type of quality and the work that you're actually providing for your customer. You should never feel like you're in a position where your ethics and your sense of, this is right, that's not, is the standard for whether or not something is done right. It should be defined ahead of time, because I've had so many situations where that's off one direction or the other. I'm doing way more than somebody expects me to do, or way less than somebody's expecting me to do, just because I'm just using my standard of what I've done in the past. That should not be the standard. It should be discussed with the customer. And I'm not knocking standard operating procedures or standard processes of like, when we paint, we always do it this way. There's nothing wrong with it. That's great. But just educate your customer on it. But you got to be careful with that. We always do, we're going to prime with a stain blocking primer. We're going to fill all the nail holes. We're going to sand. We're going to prime it again. We're going to make sure there's no imperfections with the light shining against the edge of the wall. We use 3 coats of premium paint. Well, that's expensive. All this masking and all the other work that we're going to do versus like, hey, we're just going to paint it. Right. I mean, it has to be defined. Yeah, absolutely. Don't put yourself in a position where you're delivering a premium product for the same cost as somebody else. Yeah. Or feel like your conscience is the only thing of like, well, I feel like I need to do right by people. Well, that's great. You have that ethics. That's what we should all have that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's more subjective than that. It's not that clean. Yeah. Well, I heard somebody too, it's a little off tangent, but somebody who was like, you have to make profit on your projects, and then you can just give projects away for free if you want to. Like if that ethics side of you, you know what I mean? Like then you just give back to people who need help. Yeah, if you're trying to help. Saying like if that's a piece that's like versus doing a favor for every person. Like no, you're trying to operate a business and grow a business so that you can be generous with that. So go do that. Yeah. Kind of just circling back right to the beginning where we talked about the warranty. I think we all have this, what is fair is also somewhat, it's subjective, but there's also back to the whole bubble analogy, the level,
Mhm.
it's somewhere between the lines.
Yeah.
One way or the other, it's not going to be perfect.
Mhm.
But if you're a manufacturer of a product and most of the time it doesn't work, well, you're doing a bad job.
Right.
You're ripping people off.
Yeah.
But if you're in that if you're between the lines and you're having these conversations ahead of time, I think we can arrive pretty close to where we need to be.
Yeah.
Make profit and nix this perfectionism.
Yep.
Because it's in tension with profit, and really define the quality standard, define the expectation, and also get the checklist together. I think it ties in with all the things we talk about quite frequently here.
Well, I was even thinking like when we were talking about like how do you actually get to the level of quality that your customer wants, like understand that. I'm like, that can even be like in checklist format to some extent. Like I know there's going to be differences per project, what type of project you're actually doing, but having like a standard set of questions that you're like, hey, these questions actually help me uncover, and discover what matters to you as a customer, and from a finish standpoint, from a quality standpoint. That I think would be a great way, kind of back to the checklist, back to the processes side of things. Yeah, that could be super relevant.
And if you're listening to this and say, well, process is not as much of a thing, like we do the same thing over and over again, there's also product. That all needs definition as well. We're going to use this specific product to this standard, and these are the upgrades that we could do or not do.
Yeah.
So I think there's more, even if you have process dialed in where there's no variability there, we always do the same thing, you still have product involved, and that needs definition.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the more you can standardize it, of course, that's operational efficiency for you. It weeds out the wrong clientele, so that's great.
Yep.
But if you're in a position where those are all variables, define the variables, and you start winning with people, you gain trust. People start thinking, that guy knows what he's doing because he told me what I'm not getting, and he told me what I am.
Yeah, and that's where your reputation just skyrockets.
Yes, right. Delivered to their quality, not to yours.
Yep, it's good.
All right, guys, that's the wrap for the show today. Give us your comments, your feedback.
Yeah, go build something awesome.
Yes.